Hi, this is Frank Warren, and you're watching Lights Out.
The day of reckoning is almost upon us. We are literally just a few days away from one of the most biggest and exciting cards of all time in boxing. Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder will be hoping to set up a huge mega heavyweight showdown, but their opponents, Otto Wallin and Joseph Parker, will be hoping to spoil the party. Big baby Jarrell Miller, one of the most controversial characters in boxing, has been causing a huge stir throughout fight week in Saudi. Can his opponent Daniel Dubois silence him? Or will Jarrell Miller beat Dubois and put his name back in with the other top heavyweights in the division? There's also huge opportunities on the card for British fighters Ellis Zorro and Lyndon. And Jese Rodriguez solidifies his name in the pound-for-pound rankings with an emphatic win over Sonny Edwards. This is Faisal Khan for Lights Out, and this is podcast 69 of the Lights Out Boxing Podcast, proudly sponsored by the one and only Spartans Law. With me, as always, delighted to be joined by my right-hand man, Mohsin Gulsher, a.k.a. Ron. Ron, happy holidays. How you doing, mate?
Very good, thank you. Looking forward to today's episode.
Yeah, I mean, it's one that me and you have been talking about a lot lately. And as I said, we are a few days away from the Day of Reckoning card in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. And before we talk about it, just the usual quick few reminders. If you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell for more Lights Out boxing content. Check out our sponsor, Spartans Law. Their website link is below in the description. Follow us on all the social media platforms. Again, links are in the description. And if you want to listen to this podcast on any of the audio platforms, again, check out the links in the description. Ron, as always, you now have the role of coming up with a quick fire question. You said today's a good one. So take it away, my man. What's today's quick fire question? And just to let the viewers know, I have no idea what the question is. I'm going in there without no knowledge of what this question is. So Ron, over to you, my man.
Okay. Right. So in the last few episodes, we've been really looking, we've been eager to kind of anticipating this big undercard in Saudi Arabia. And the question I thought, let's just imagine that the Saudis had a time machine. They've got a lot of money as it is. Mm-hmm. Imagine that they could bring back two past or present fighters to have to include on that undercard. Who would you want them to be? You've got two fights, so there's four fighters you have to pick. Two more fights on that also already amazing card as it is. Who would you have? Past, it could be anyone that's past, as old as back as Jake LaMotta, or I'll let you pick Rocky Marciano if you want to go that back. Jack Johnson. Which four fighters would you have?
Does this have to be a fight that's already happened, or could it be a fantasy fight?
No, these are fighters. These are something that we haven't seen. If you, I'll let you decide. I'll let you pick. It could be you could do a hypothetical fight.
Okay, that's a good one. Right, for this card, if I was making a fight from the past or even the present, one fight I would put on this card, it definitely is Ward versus Gatti 1. I would put that fight on this card because I think, looking out throughout the rest of the card, we haven't got any fights in the sort of, smaller division. So Ward Gatti 1, would be a fight I'd have put on this card. And the second fight,
make this one that these are two opponents that haven't fought each other.
The second fight would be Lennox Lewis versus Riddick Bowe. That would have been my main event. Those are the two fights I'd have put on this card.
Great shout, that is. Yeah.
What about you?
I like the two that you. I'm going to go a little bit old school, and this is someone I've heard a lot about in interviews, and is not a well-known name in boxing. I mean, outside of boxing. Obviously, we know George Foreman. I mean, amazing. Was he the oldest heavyweight title winner? I think he was. Him against Ernie Shavers.
Right.
That's someone who Ali said in an interview that no one hits as hard as him. I would have liked to have seen that because I've heard a lot about him. I'm going to go a little bit lower, with the smaller guys. Prince Nazim Hamid versus Juan Manuel Marquez.
A great fight. Turkey Alal Sheikh, if you're looking for anyone to sort of help you source up and spice these cards up, just give us a call. Our links
Well,
are
look,
below
I
in the
don't think,
description.
as rich as he is, the amount of connections that he's got, I don't think he has a time machine in his. But they would, I mean, there's lots of fights. You can just sit here all day, and you could have brought back the old school middleweight division. Where you had the four kings. You could have had them on that one. On that undercard, you could have gone. Even lighter than them. So
The 90s
it's a
heavyweight era
hypothetical question.
could have been on the card as well.
What about Klitschko, Vladimir Klitschko versus Lennox Lewis? What do you think of that one?
I think Lewis would have beaten him. I mean, he beat his brother. All right.
You reckon Lewis would have had him as well?
Yeah, there was a bit of controversy surrounding Lewis Klitschko, but if you look at Klitschko's face after the fight, I think it was the right call in the end. But listen, you could put so many fascinating fights on these cards. But the beauty of this card run is there are so many fascinating fights. So we're going to talk about that. But let's obviously start off with what went down last weekend in America. Jesse Bam Rodriguez is emphatic, and that's why I call it emphatic win over Sonny Edwards to become the unified flyweight champion of the world. Now, for a number of years, the flyweight division and the smaller weights haven't really got the recognition that they deserve. But Ron, is it fair to say that these two fighters have put that division back on the map, especially with the fight they delivered last Saturday night?
I agree. I thought it was a great fight, end-to-end stuff. Both undefeated, kind of coming into this contest, best of their division, for all the marbles. And I really enjoyed that fight. I don't really kind of go out my way to watch these flyweight divisions, like you said. They're not really spoken about. People kind of are put off that they don't have that knockout punches like the heavier kind of their counterparts have in boxing. But I thought it was a great fight, and I loved how Sonny Edwards kind of talked up, did the showmanship. I mean, I don't know. I kind of considered him a bit like a mini Tyson Fury, the way, his, how he was selling and promoting the fight. And Bam Rodriguez was quite, humble, down to earth. But he did his talking in the ring where it mattered most.
Yeah, I can kind of get the comparison between comparing Sonny with Tyson. Sonny's is a big talker, and he's also a hell of a fighter. And as I said, the sort of smaller divisions, apart from Inoue, none of the other fighters sort of get that, the audience that they deserve. And this drew in a big audience. You and me being two of the fans that watched on Saturday night, and it was a phenomenal fight. It was a great fight. It was a fight that a lot of fans have been calling for sort of the last 12 to 18 months, and they both did it in their prime. Sonny Edwards has nothing to be ashamed about. He just come up against a great fighter in Jesse Bam Rodriguez. And, what this does, not only does obviously one fighter sort of go on to the next level and, Sonny Edwards, I wouldn't say he has to rebuild, but, his next, target has to be maybe go up in weight. But what this does now is it kind of gives a sort of, the sort of smaller audience outside, those hardcore fans that watch everything to do with boxing. It gives them a bit of knowledge about who your Bam Rodriguez and your Sonny Edwards is. And I think, the good outweighs the bad, especially for Sonny Edwards. Listen, I mean, he's put his name on the map. He's an exciting fighter. He's going to be in more great fights. And for Bam Rodriguez, I hope both of them go up in weight now. I don't see the point in being undisputed or anything. Go up to Superfly, then work up to bantamweight. It was a great fight on Saturday night, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm glad that these guys, finally got the spotlight. I mean, throughout the last sort of 2 years in boxing, we're talking about the heavyweights, Fury, Usyk, Joshua's, welterweights, Crawfords and Spencers, middleweights, Canelos, and the Haneys and the Garcias. It's about time, the other fighters, especially the smaller fighters, got a piece of the pie. But yeah, great fight. Brilliantly promoted by Eddie Hearn, as always. The card itself was a very, very good card. And as I said, there's no shame in for the loser, which was Sonny Edwards. His stock has risen even more. And he's going to be in more bigger fights. But Jesse Bam Rodriguez, before we move on, because we've got a lot to talk about, is it fair to say that this guy right now is in the top 10 pound for pound?
He's definitely in that conversation. He's definitely in that top 10. Look what he did to a fellow undefeated fighter in Sonny Edwards. we don't really hear much about Bam Rodriguez. So I think that's now brought him on the lips of kind of British boxing fans now. They will be aware of him now. If you don't mind, I want to talk a little bit about the fight. I felt it was the wrong fight for Sonny Edwards. I think he's not known for power punching, and he's only respectable, to his career so far, but he's only got 4 knockouts in 20 odd fights. So how that fight went out, it wasn't how I would have anticipated, how I thought it would go. There was a lot of trading, a lot of kind of taking the center of the ring, which went against Sonny Edwards' kind of strengths. He's got a very good high boxing IQ, good movement, uses the jab really well, as we've seen in his previous fights. He's a very evasive fighter, very hard to pin down. But in that last fight, Bam just, showed he's the bigger puncher there. Obviously, he's got a better knockout ratio on his record. I think he's got 14 or 15 knockouts on his record. So they've got a similar number of fights. I think in the second round, I think, there was a cut underneath the right eye, I think it was. So
yeah,
that seemed to be kind of played into Bam Rodriguez's kind of advantage. And, it was Bam Rodriguez's fight. That's all credit to Bam Rodriguez making a fight and not fight their actual fight. He kind of played to his strengths. So rather than playing to Sonny Edwards' strength. What do you think? How'd you put it down?
Yeah, listen, I just thought, obviously the class showed in the end, but it was clear to see that after, I believe, the cut under the eye, it was one-way traffic, and Sonny Edwards gave as good as he got. He was still throwing bombs even when he was hurt. Once the knockdown happened, you knew that the fight wasn't going to go the distance. And it's those fights that prevail these fighters into sort of that next level of their career. And, even though Sonny Edwards lost the fight, I believe he's moved on to the next level of his career as well, because they both proved that they belong at this level. And they've both delivered the fight that the fight fans wanted. So, I'm gutted for Sonny Edwards. Obviously, fellow Britishman. I wanted him to win, but he didn't. But, even Sonny Edwards said, listen, there's no shame in losing to a guy like Jese Bam Rodriguez. And as I've stated a few times already on today's podcast, the bigger doors are going to open for both fighters. Sonny Edwards definitely will have more bigger fights out there. I hope they both go up in weight. We have to wait and see what's next. But I'm glad the flyweight division finally, the smaller weights, finally got a
Would
big
you
stage.
put, you're saying about next fight, Bam Rodriguez, I think the next weight up obviously is bantamweight, and we know a certain Japanese monsters in that weight. Could you see that fight happening at all?
No, absolutely not. No, absolutely not. Listen, Inoue fights on Boxing Day. He's going to absolutely smash the guy to pieces, and that's no disrespect to his opponent. But no, I'm sorry. Right now, nobody's beating Inoue, especially at those weights. Absolutely not. No. It's kind of like I just wouldn't do it. Absolutely not. But yeah, listen. As I said, we've got a lot to talk about, so we're going to move on, and we've got the preview.
Before you move on, I mean, I want to give a shout out to Junaid Boston, who was also on the card. Really up and coming British fighter. Balls on the kid. What is he? 20, 21, going over to the States and putting in a good performance like that. He wasn't very happy with his performance, but I thought, for someone of his age, at his point in his career, getting rounds under his belt, they were trading. So I think that's a chin check for him as well.
Yeah, great performance by Junaid Boston. I'm really, really enjoying the sort of career pan out for him so far, and another exciting British prospect. And as you said, going over to America, it's a different type of route that Eddie Hearn's doing with most of his fighters right now, especially the sort of next generation fighters. But yeah, exciting times. But Ron, we move on, because we've got a lot to talk about. This is the card we've been waiting for. It's a great way to end the year. The Day of Reckoning card in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia. Gutted I couldn't be out there, but obviously due to work commitments and a few family commitments, fingers crossed, Fury versus Usyk. But we'll start off with what I believe will be the main event. That's the former unified two-time heavyweight champion of the world, Anthony Joshua versus Otto Wallin. A lot of points to discuss with this fight, Ron. You know, one of the key points with this Joshua fight is that he's switched over to Ben Davison. We don't know if this is going to be a long-term project, but you know, he's gone over to Ben Davison. Now, if you watch AJ's sort of, you know, his training videos that he's released on social media, it's kind of like Ben Davison is trying to get him to revert back to being, you know, a power puncher. Um, this is the Anthony Joshua that I feel as if can beat anybody. Now, I've never been a fan of the more technical side of boxing to Anthony Joshua. I just feel as if it's not him and it's not work, and it's the reason why he lost both fights against Alexander Usyk. So there's a more mean, lean fighting machine and a more dangerous, in you know, bad intentions Anthony Joshua. Is this the Anthony Joshua that we've got to see throughout the rest of his career, which starts on Saturday night against Otto Wallin? And it's fair to say, Ron, that this is another huge fight for AJ. It's a fight he's got to win.
Absolutely agree. I mean, he can't afford to lose. You know, we're hearing about rumors of 2-fight deal with Deontay Wilder. We're hearing dates in March for the first fight in Saudi Arabia. So, I mean, we expect him to come through this. I mean, this is how many times has Joshua changed his coach now? I mean, his previous coach. What's his name? I'm thinking
Derek James.
Derek James. Yeah, that's one. I mean, we expected him to be more explosive and more aggressive in his last fight against
Robert
Helenius, but he was very tentative, very measured. He was very patient, and then he did land that punch. So I'm glad to see, Ben Davison. I highly rate him as a coach, and I think he's got some really good boxers under his that he's guiding. So, you know what I mean? Is it too many coaches in such a short period of time in between fights? Is that a good thing? What do you think?
No, it's not a good thing. But from what I've gathered, I believe that AJ wanted a cap in the UK, and I think he said in an interview that it just didn't make sense to have a camp in America than to fly out to Saudi, something along those lines. But it's interesting to see how he how he sets up against Otto Wallin, and I think I'm going to go for what we've seen by the training videos that have been released on social media. That he's going to look to knock out Otto Wallin, and he's going to look to make a statement. And we've got to talk about Otto Wallin because, I mean, a lot of people will only know Otto Wallin because of his fight with Tyson Fury, which was in 2019. He caused Tyson Fury a hell of a lot of problems. He gave him a nasty cut. And, to some people, they say that the fight should have been stopped because of how bad the cut was, but it wasn't. Otto Wallin won his last fight against Murat Gassiev. He's a man that's been lurking around the heavyweight division, and he's sort of been waiting for that opportunity to rise to sort of get him into the mix with the elite fighters. Now, I believe a fighter that's got sort of nothing to lose is a more dangerous fighter. Now, who has nothing to lose in this? Who's got more not to lose? Is it AJ, who's potentially a defeat away from his career being finished? Or is it Otto Wallin, who nobody expects to win? The beauty of this fight, right, is the fact that these two have sparred together in the past. And if you listen to the press conferences and interviews, Otto Wallin claims he knows AJ very well. He knows what he's all about. But I just got a feeling, right, we're watching the build-up to this fight. We're going to get the old AJ on Saturday night, and I really hope we do, because I still feel as if that AJ is capable of beating of any heavyweight. However, if he reverts back to type of where he puts in performances like he did against Usyk, where he tries to be smart and he tries to box behind the jab and he tries to outdo him on points, it's not going to work. This guy is a very, very tricky fighter. And when they say the term banana skin, this is the biggest banana skin in the whole heavyweight division right now. It's bigger than Joe Joyce, because I believe Anthony Joshua would beat Joe Joyce. It's bigger than Dillian White, because I believe he would have won the rematch had it happened. And it's bigger than any other fight apart from Usyk, Wilder and Fury. This, for me, is the most trickiest fight for him. But I expect Anthony Joshua to turn up and to stick it on Otto Wallin from the minute go. Ron, are you confident that we're going to get a very good version of Anthony Joshua on Saturday night? Or do you see the unexpected happening?
No, I mean, I'm confident that AJ will come through it. But, your second question was, what kind of performance will it be? I think what Otto Wallin will want to do is unsettle him very early on. He doesn't want him to get into a rhythm, that where he can easily dictate that fight, use his boxing skills to keep him at arm's length, you got to remember Otto Wallin's a southpaw as well. And he's the same height, and he's quite a physical presence as well. So it's going to be a tricky fight. I mean, for a number of reasons, as I mentioned. But if I was Otto Wallin, I'm gonna be pushing that pace at the beginning, not letting kind of AJ settle, and bringing that, wants him to be kind of get reckless and kind of throw those bombs earlier on. But I don't know. I'll see what I'm sure Ben Davidson's kind of looked at videos and done a lot of kind of work with AJ on how he wants him to set up in this fight. But I would like to see the old AJ where he's kind of tearing into him earlier on. But I don't know. This is it. I was expecting those kind of performances against the Franklins, against the Helleniuses, but we didn't. It was quite a bore until that knockout, versus Hellenius. So
one thing you can't take away, right, in a fighter is, listen, a fighter can, lose their legs. A fighter can maybe lose their punch resistance, and a fighter can maybe, there's a lot of things that a fighter loses as his career goes on, but a fighter never loses their power. And that is what potentially gets Anthony Joshua to a third heavyweight title. That's what gets him to the big fights with the Wilders, the Furies. He's got to go back to being a power puncher. If he, by any means, tries to become a more technical boxer, it's not going to work for him. Listen, fair play to the man. He's tried to become a more technical fighter. But if you look at that AJ that beat Klitschko, that beat Dillian White the first time round, that AJ was unstoppable at one point. So, if he turns up with bad intentions on Saturday night, he wins. However, if he turns up to try and box against a southpaw, who's got a very good record, I wouldn't fancy his chances. But listen, you never know. I mean, being under Ben Davison for all these weeks, it might surprise us. We don't know what Anthony Joshua is going to turn up, but I have a feeling that Ben Davison is going to say, listen, let's just go back to our old ways, become a power puncher again, rely on your power, and the rest will take care of itself. Before we move on, prediction. I am going to go for an Anthony Joshua points decision win, but I do believe it will be a comfortable win, and I do believe he'll put Wallin down a few times. Ron, your prediction?
Agreed. No, same as you. But Wallin needs to do something early to upset him, get him chasing the fight, use his southpaw, awkwardness. Wallin's got 14 knockouts on his record as well, but his level of opposition is nowhere near as what AJ's been in with. But I agree with. I think it's going to be a points win, a big margin. I'd like to see AJ kind of drop him a few times, show that aggression. So what made him so interesting to watch, box office to watch.
Right. Well, we'll move on now because obviously the card gets bigger and better, and we'll talk about what I believe will be the co-main event. Is the bronze bomber, the former WBC heavyweight champion of the world, former bronze Olympic medalist Deontay Wilder takes on former world champion Joseph Parker. Listen, it is fair to say that this is if these two win on Saturday night, Joshua and Wilder, it sets up that mega fight. Hopefully in 2024. But you've got to give a bit of credit to them because the banana skins that they're taking are big banana skins. Now, we're not just talking about no mug here. We're talking about Joseph Parker, former world champion, who's lost to credible opponents, Joe Joyce, Dillian White, and Anthony Joshua. Now, look, it's pretty easy to ask the question, how does Joseph Parker win this fight? He's got a box behind his jab. He's got to keep his distance. But most importantly, Ronnie, he's got to avoid the right hand for 12 rounds. That's what Tyson Fury said. They asked him, how does Joseph Parker beat Deontay Wilder? He said, simple, it just doesn't get hit. But, listen, over 12 rounds, I'm sorry, it's literally impossible to avoid that right hand. Tyson Fury beat that man twice, and he suffered 4 knockdowns in the process because of how dangerous that right hand is. Now, I mean, look, we've done a lot of research about these fights. We've kind of done our own sort of, we've got our own knowledge of how the fights are going to pan out. There's a little point here that's sort of going under the radar here. Andy Lee was in the corner for Tyson Fury's second fight against Deontay Wilder. Now, one of the most interesting points about the second fight between Fury and Wilder is that Fury's camp was saying throughout the build-up in fight week to that fight, Tyson's going to step on him. He's going to go on the front foot. He's going to try and knock Wilder out. I, for one, definitely thought that was crazy, but it actually worked. Now, because of how well Andy Lee will know Deontay Wilder because of how much studying he's done against him and because of how much work he's done. Do you believe that maybe, just maybe, they might feel as if Joseph Parker has potentially enough power to maybe even stop Deontay Wilder? Because if he goes for a points decision, he's going to get knocked out. But we've seen in the past, Wilder does have a very small gas tank. He does tire out. He does punch himself out. So could that play into Joseph Parker's hands?
I'm not going to rule it out. I think that's a possibility with all the points that you made about the gas tank. And I think with Deontay Wilder, how he fights, it's kind of like hell for leather. He puts a lot of energy into those swings, but when they land it lands, it kind of puts people to sleep. The game plan is going to be really important, how they kind of carry themselves, in that fight, what Joseph Parker does, kind of keeps that distance. But, you've got someone like Wilder who's got a freakishly long kind of reach as well. So he needs to box smart. He needs to box very clever, kind of uses, kind of holding him up, kind of frustrating him, get on the inside, kind of landing those punches. Take a note out of what Fury did. I know Fury and Joseph Parker have completely different dimensions, but there is things that he can pick up from those performances. What Fury did really well is kind of, stopping Wilder, kind of getting those shots off by tying him up, kind of leaning on him, and really check, test his, as you said, gas tank, take him into the later rounds. And that's where you're going to more likely to have your more success. So what you're predicting maybe what if Joseph Parker's to win, you'll say he wins by points, or is it more likely to win by knockout?
No, listen, if Parker's going to win this fight, he's got to try.
If you were to kind of put money on him.
No, I mean, my money's on Deontay Wilder to win the fight. But however,
no, if Joseph Parker was to win, how does he win?
Yeah, he's got to win by knockout because Deontay Wilder's vulnerable. I mean, one of the reasons why he's vulnerable, because if you look back to the Fury, the third fight, Tyson Fury, when he was working a bit more behind the jab, they were more like power punches. And let's take into consideration as well, Deontay Wilder has not boxed in over a year. Joseph Parker's been very active the last 2 years. I mean, people will probably say, oh, but that doesn't matter. Of course it matters. I've always said that ring inactivity is the biggest Achilles heel in boxing.
Agreed.
And as I said, that this is no mug that he's fighting. This is a former world champion who's coming off the back of a good knockout win on the Fury and Ngannou card. He's only lost to the best heavyweight fighters in the division.
But what has that taken out of him? I mean, talking about those defeats,
Ron, he's been more active throughout the last 18
He has,
months.
but you mentioned about as fighters get older, punch resistance, is that the same? And then you're going against someone on that level who's the most ferocious puncher in boxing, full stop, right now.
When we talk about what else has Deontay Wilder got left to offer, and you talk about what I think Joseph Parker's, a lot of people, right? And I know the likelihood is that it's going to end by a knockout. And a lot of people have got their money on Deontay Wilder, but I'm just saying, don't underestimate a former world champion that's been boxing for a very, very long time. That's improved under Andy Lee, but listen, that right hand can, if it lands, it's going to only end one way. And I can't see Joseph Parker, avoiding that right hand for 12 rounds. But listen, let's not rule out Joseph Parker perhaps sticking it on Deontay Wilder. He hasn't fought in over a year. He gets tired after 6 rounds. Whenever he throws a jab, it's like trying to throw a power punch. And he's not fought in over a year. Joseph Parker's got to be looking at these points and thinking, well, do you know what? Rather than trying to outbox this guy, maybe if I look to stick it on him, I can win this fight. And as you said, obviously, Fury and Parker have different dimensions. That I agree with. But what I saw Fury do well in the second and the third fight, and this makes a massive difference in heavyweight boxing, is Fury leaned on him a lot. And when you put all that weight on a fighter, it tires the fighter out. It makes them physically tired. And that's what Fury did. Now, Parker, Fury, 2 different fighters in terms of weight, but Parker's a big guy. He's over 6 foot. So if I'm Joseph Parker, I've got to be looking at these things, Try to take him into the later rounds. Try to stick it on him early. You know, don't sit behind the jab and try and outbox the guy, because I do believe the further the fight goes, it gets more dangerous for Deontay Wilder, because you know Malik Scott, right? As you know, we've only seen him work with Wilder for 2 fights. Okay, you can't take much away from Robert Helenius because the fight only lasted 75 seconds. And the third fight with Tyson Fury, he showed a hell of a lot of heart. He managed to put Fury down twice, but I've not seen enough under Malik Scott. So it's interesting to see a third fight for Wilder under Malik Scott. But however, if you're Wilder right now, you're hoping that he gets an early knockout and it hopefully sets up the fight with Anthony Joshua. Ron, prediction time. You know, I'm going to go for Deontay Wilder 5th round stoppage.
Yep, same as well. I'm going for a knockout. It's going to be in the earlier rounds, maybe between rounds 4 and 6, I reckon. So similar as you, really. So
it's a great fight to look forward to, and it, as I said, the card it just gets better and better because Daniel Dubois will take on the controversial big baby Jarrell Miller. Now, if anyone's been watching Fight Week in Saudi Arabia, if they've been watching all the YouTube channels and the clips on social media, there's one man making the most noise out of everybody, and it's big baby Jarrell Miller. Now, we knew he was going to cause a lot of controversy. What does he do? He starts off the week by sticking it on Daniel Dubois as soon as he arrives in his hotel. And then he has a heated altercation with Anthony Joshua. And then at the grand arrivals, whilst Daniel Dubois is doing an interview, he starts calling him ugly and that he's a quitter. This is arguably the most controversial guy in boxing, but what I've seen through social media is everybody wants this guy's head completely taken off on Saturday night. The beauty of this fight is we've not seen big baby Jarrell Miller in a big fight, and Daniel Dubois is coming off the back of a world title defeat. Ron, who needs this more?
I think they both need it, really. Let's be honest. I mean, who has to this date has baby Miller fought? Anyone? You know, the last fight that he had was Lucas Brown, was it?
Yeah.
I can't think of any credible names on this. You know, he talks a good fight. You know, he needs to back it up with a performance. You know, against a good high top level performer, top 10 boxer, and that's what Daniel Dubois is. Daniel Dubois, unfortunately, he's 26 years of age. He's still young, but every time he has stepped up, be it who did he lose against? You know, obviously he lost against Usyk. He lost against Joyce. Both questionable. You know, did he quit? But he's done something worthwhile in his career to get him there. I don't know. Baby Miller just seems to be kind of runs his mouth a lot. But he's a self-promoter, isn't he? You know, he's interesting. He clickbait. You know, I saw those videos where he approached AJ and saying, "When are you going to fight me?" And AJ kind of said, "Well, you're not big enough. You know, you're not on my radar." So yeah, you need this loud talk, kind of trash talking American, which I'm curious to see how this fight turns out. I don't know. I just wasn't that. I watched his last fight against Lucas Brown. I wasn't really particularly impressed with him. I just seen he looked like he gets tired very quickly. He's a big lump, isn't he? He's going to come in apparently at 320 pounds, which is what, 23 stones. So how do you carry that? You know, and he's got big legs as well. So he's a unit. But how does Dubois approach this? Does he take it into the later rounds and then wait until Jarrell Miller kind of tires out and then go for the knockout then? But I think Jarrell Miller is going to put it on him when that first bell rings. I think that it's going to be fireworks, and it depends on how Dubois kind of uses his head, composes himself, and hopefully he's learned his lessons. But two completely different fighters. Usyk. They're nothing like what Jarrell Miller is going to bring. Usyk's brilliantly technically, and we've got Joyce as well, very good technically as well. So very different, but I'm sure he's learned lessons from those fights, from those experiences.
You mentioned the key word there on fireworks, right? I'm going to sum this fight up for you: an all-out shootout. There's not going to be no boxing. There's, might be if round one might be, just to test, feel each other out. After that, it's going to be bombs. You know, one thing I really like what Daniel Dubois has done in his career is he's gone with Don Charles, and Don Charles, you know, is a type of trainer that wants to set his fighter up to be, you know, a wrecking ball. And because of the trash talking and because of what's been said from Miller's side towards Dubois, this for me is the fight I'm looking forward to the most, because this is going to be a fight that was just a complete shootout, and I think this is what this fight needs. I can't see this fight going beyond 6. Dubois, you know, if he gets clipped, you know, he's got a suspect chin, and Big Baby, as you said, how much does he weigh? What, 23 stones?
23 stones.
And he's not fought
Against
since
Lucas Brown, he came in at 350
yeah,
pounds.
I mean, you can forget
He's
about
coming
going
at
12
320 here.
rounds. You can forget Big Baby Miller even thinking of going 12 rounds against a 26-year-old, against a younger Daniel Dubois, who's an active fighter. I asked you the question, who needs this more? Daniel Dubois needs this more, because you know, with Big Baby Jarrell Miller, you just never know what he's going to do next. Wouldn't surprise me it comes out and there's been another failed drug test after the fight. I hope not. I want to see the guy try get his career back on track. But Daniel Dubois coming off a defeat against Alexander Usyk, and since that defeat, a lot of people have been asking, oh, you know, he takes the knee too quick. Is he a quitter? You know, he doesn't like it when somebody tries sticking it on him. Look who the guy's lost against. He's lost against 2 brilliant heavyweights. One, a guy who's about to challenge for the undisputed heavyweight title of the world, and a guy in Joe Joyce. There's no shame in losing to guys like that. And I think, you know, people have got to give the guy a bit more credit. Having said that, this is a fight he has to win, because if he loses against Big Baby on Saturday night, that's when you really ask the question of every time he stepped up, he's failed. Does he belong sort of British European level? And I hope not. He's a British fighter, and I hope he comes through on Saturday night, which is why I'm going to go for a Daniel Dubois 4th round knockout on Saturday night. Ron, your prediction?
I'm going to go for a reverse. I'm going to go for Big Baby Miller. I just think he's going to come out all guns blazing. I don't think that Dubois will be able to. He'll be overwhelmed, and we can see a quick finish.
Let's wait and see. Anyway, we'll move on now with the rest of the card. You know, it's just so brilliant to see that there's so many eye-catching fights on this card to talk about. And I think the next 2 guys that we're going to talk about, you know, they're world champions. They could easily headline any card. We'll talk about Dmitry Bivol, current light heavyweight world champion, defends his title against Britain's very own Lyndon Arthur. Ron, obviously, a lot of people have got an easy night to work for Bivol. Now, I mean, what a great Christmas present this would be if Lyndon Arthur can get the win on Saturday night. However, he's coming up against a guy who's considered one of the best fighters in the world right now. How does Lyndon Arthur do the unthinkable on Saturday night and beat Dmitry Bivol? Because it's a huge task, and you've got to give a lot of credit to Lyndon Arthur and his trainer Pat Barrett for even taking the fight.
It's a very difficult question to answer. That I genuinely don't know. You know, all respect to Lyndon Arthur for what he has achieved in his career. You know, with his highs of, you know, kind of beating Anthony Yarde, and surprisingly getting this amazing opportunity to fight on an amazing card. I wish him all the best. I think if he can take anything away from how Craig Richards fought against Bivol, I think was it during lockdown?
Yeah,
there was some things that he could take away from that performance. Maybe, you know, kind of Richards was supposed to be kind of easily blown over, but he gave a really good account of himself. So, and he won. I think Bivol won on points that night, but it was a close fight. So, but since then, Bivol has come on really nicely, you know, with wins against Canelo, you know, amongst others as well. So, yeah, it's an uphill struggle. I don't know the answer, because Bivol is technically a great fighter. Lyndon Arthur, you know, he was stopped in the rematch against you know, Anthony Yarde. So, you know, and the level of opposition that, you know, Lyndon Arthur has fought, it's going to be something completely new to him, you know, fighting that elite level of a fighter like Dmitry Bivol.
You know, someone asked me the other day, how the hell does Lyndon Arthur beat Dmitry Bivol? The answer to that is pretty simple. He's got to do what Bivol did to Canelo. He's got to bully him. He's just got to stay on him. But obviously, Bivol was, a lot bigger in weight than Canelo. He'd been at light heavyweight throughout most of his career. Canelo had stepped up in weight. I know he'd been a light heavyweight champion before, but obviously he fought, who he fought to win the world title. And when he come up against Bivol, who is the elite fighter of that division, in my opinion, he was outclassed on the night. Now, Lyndon Arthur, he's already done the unthinkable once when he beat Anthony Yard, but obviously he lost a rematch. You got to look at this as a fight for Lyndon Arthur. It's a fight where he's got nothing to lose. If anything, he'll gain a lot of credibility with putting in a good performance. But, Pat Barrett is somebody that I love listening to. And when you listen to his interviews and when he talks about his fighters, you put him in with Bivol or any of the best fighters in the world, he doesn't come to lose. He doesn't care who it is. He always believes that his fighters are capable of doing it. And that's why this is an interesting fight because, I genuinely believe Pat Barrett and Lyndon Arthur think they can win this fight, and who's to say that Bivol doesn't have an off night, who's to say Lyndon Arthur doesn't, catch him with a lucky shot. Anything can happen. And that's the beauty of world title fights, especially with an underdog. Lyndon Arthur, he's been around quite a while. This is what he's trained for all of his life. These are what his previous wins have got him to. And he deserves a shot.
Mm.
But however, you've got to look at sort of the more realistic side. Bivol's been on an absolute wrecking ball at the moment, with the wins against Ramirez and Canelo. The guy I was referring to, Canelo beat this division was Kovalev. But everybody's talking about, Bivol versus Beterbiev in 2024. Beterbiev's got a huge task against Callum Smith. And, Lyndon Arthur's a good fighter. But I think you've got to again go back to being realistic. I think he will have too much for Lyndon Arthur on the night. But I would love to see Lyndon Arthur pull this off. However, I just think because of the class of Bivol, I think it's going to be a step too far. But he'll gain a lot of experience from this fight, and if he puts up a good fight, he'll be back in world title fights. But you don't know, Ron. It's a huge card. Bivol's not the main event on this card, so maybe this fight has gone under the radar. Maybe there's a lot, a lot of focus not on Arthur and more on Bivol. So, just sum me up, Ron. I mean, if you're in Lyndon Arthur's corner, how do you set up for this fight? You've seen Bivol fight on a number of occasions. Do you feel as if that he's got to do what Bivol did to Canelo to win this fight?
I mean, does he have the capabilities? You've got to be realistic, like you said earlier, with the levels here. With levels that Lyndon Arthur's fought at, and I think it's a big ask. Like you said, I mean, like what you said earlier, that he's got nothing to lose here. I can't see anything beyond a Bivol kind of win here by points. I'm hoping it's going to be a really exciting fight, like the way Anthony Yard gave us against Kovalev and against Beterbiev as well. So something like that, Lyndon Arthur can walk away with his head held high. You said earlier, maybe one thing that you could take away is bullying him, but can he do that? Does he have the tools to be able to bully him? Does he have the ring IQ to do that? I
only time will tell, Roll, but it is.
Yeah, no, that's where I'm standing. So I apologize. I haven't got much to say.
No.
I can't see how this might happen. But please make me eat my words, Lyndon Arthur.
Yeah, 100%.
British fighter. We fully support you. We hope the best and bring those titles home. And you deserve it. He's an honest fighter. He gave a really good account of himself in his career so far. He's only lost the once. Is that against Anthony Yard? So. He's no mug, but he's got a title as well himself. So I wish him all the best. But I know you're going to ask predictions. My prediction is firmly with Dmitry Bivol by wide points margin or a knockout in the later rounds.
Yeah, I'm going to go for Bivol on points, and I believe it'll be unanimous. But again, great experience for Lyndon Arthur, and best of luck, mate. I really would love to see him put it off. Jay Opetaia, the king of the cruiserweight division, in my opinion, the monster of the cruiserweight division, defends his. Well, no, he doesn't. because the IBF didn't sanction it as a world title fight, and he's vacated that
shame.
title. Takes on Ellis Zorro. He would talk about the fight, but I'll have to say, you know what? The IBF should feel absolutely ashamed of themselves. Absolutely disgraceful. You know, Ellis Zorro, right? This fight was announced, what, 6 weeks ago? Has been training for 6 weeks, believing he's fighting for a world title.
Shot, yeah.
And the audacity of the IBF to what? The audacity of the IBF to not even sanction this as a world title fight is disgraceful. And
do we know the reasoning why that they've done that?
Got a ranked an opponent, I believe, but Opetaia has vacated the title. I just feel so sorry for Ellis Zorro. But listen, he's still got a great opportunity. If he was to win this fight, right, you know, it doesn't get a world title. I just think it's governing bodies, right? They're an absolute joke at times. You know, the WBC, you know, my favorite governing body right now is probably the worst governing body in boxing because of how long they allow their fighters to hold their titles without defending them. One. And number two, I'm going to go back to the point I made. Ellis Zorro's been in camp for 6 weeks, maybe even longer, thinking he's got a world title shot. And these guys have just, no, we don't want to sanction it because he's not ranked. I mean, come on, for God's sakes, you know, give the guy a break, you know. It's so disappointing, but the fight still goes ahead, which is, you know, a good thing. Jay Opetaia, the last time he was against a British opposition in Jordan Thompson, you know, it was an absolute mauling. You know, we said that Lyndon Arthur's got a huge mountain to climb, but I believe the biggest mountain of the night is definitely with Ellis Zorro, who's a very good fighter. His last fight against the British fighter, Tyson Fury's cousin. You know, I watched that performance and he absolutely destroyed him. You know, so it's a very, very tough ask because of
Hosea Burton, wasn't it?
Hosea Burton, that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Because of how strong Opetaia is, Ron, I can't see this fight going beyond 3 rounds. I hope I'm wrong. You know, we back our British fighters. We hope they win. But this guy, right, I watched this fight against Jordan Thompson, and he's an absolute machine. I believe he's number 1, and I believe Riakpor's number 2 in the division. And Riakpor doesn't even hold a world title. I would love to see that fight. But however, we've got this fight on Saturday night. Does him having to vacate that title piss him off even more and make him want to make a statement? Or do you think because of the uncertainty surrounding whether this is going to be a world title fight could maybe have taken his eye off the ball a bit?
Look, I think he's going to be professional about it. He's fought really hard in his career so far to get to this point. You know, he made that very clear in the press conference that I've worked really hard. I deserve to be here. So I'm sure he's going to give a really good account of himself, regardless of whether it's for a world title or not. Opetaia's got big and better, big fights coming up. You know, if he comes through this tough, you know, fight against Ellis Zorro. But, you know, Ellis Zorro's no mug. I think he'll give him a good account of himself. But again, I don't see anything, only nothing but a victory for Opetaia. I think he will, you know, he will overmatch Zorro just because of levels. You know, just think about who they fought at, what level they fought at. And I think that will show on the night.
Yeah. Prediction, I'm going to go for a 3rd round knockout victory for Jay Opetaia. Right, 3 more fights on the card. The Croatian Filip Hrgovic takes on Mori. Again, another good fight, and it's going to be interesting to see how Filip Hrgovic gets on this time round. His last fight, he beat Dempsey McKean on the Joshua versus Helenius undercard. A very, very good performance. Mark Mori, anytime anyone mentions Mark Mori, oh, isn't that the guy that fought David Haye in his comeback fight? Yes, he is. And isn't that the guy that David Haye knocked out? Yes, he is. But if you look at the stats, Mori's won his last 10 fights in stat. Banana skin for Filip Hrgovic, who knows, it could be. But Filip Hrgovic is considered maybe one of the next fighters to sort of take over after the Fury, Usyk, Joshua Wilder era. Who knows? But having said that, there's going to be a lot of eyes on Filip Hrgovic on Saturday night, Ron. Matchmaking, I think, is pretty good. Like I said, Mori's not lost in his last 10 fights. And Filip Hrgovic needs to keep active. He's had a decent year so far.
I mean, look, Mark Mori is what? He's 42 years old. You know, he's got, you know, and this is a great.
Hey. How old was George Foreman when he won the world title?
Oh, come on. You know.
Hey, age is nothing but a number.
You're comparing apples and pears here, my friend. You have apples and pears. But I take your point. You know, he's earned this shot, but I think Filip Hrgovic is kind of using this as an opportunity to keep, like you said, keep active. I think he's the #1 contender for the IBF title.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I was reading some rumors. I don't know if it's true, but if the Fury versus Usyk fight happens, then whoever wins those fight titles, they might have to vacate the IBF. So that's the route that Hrgovic has got. So he needs to come through this. That carrot's there. And I'm hearing that maybe AJ and Hrgovic might meet for their IBF title. So, yeah, I mean, Hrgovic, he came through a very tough test against Zhilei Zhang, which was contentious. Did he win that? Did Zhang win that? I would have liked to have seen that as a rematch. That would have made, as I mentioned before, that would have made the card absolutely 10 out of 10 for me, because a lot of unanswered, a lot of people were questioning Hrgovic's credentials after that, contentious kind of points victory, which, where he was dropped. Mark Mori, I can't see him winning this either. I think I see Hrgovic winning by knockout round 4.
Yeah. I mean, I'd like to give every fighter a chance, but I think Hrgovic wins this inside of 2 rounds. I think he knocks him out in emphatic fashion, and I think he makes a statement. And 2024, I'm looking forward to seeing Hrgovic, in more bigger and better fights. I'd like to see him in that rematch with Zhilei Zhang. I 100% agree with you on that. Maybe even a fight with Joshua. There's so many options open out there for these heavyweights. You mentioned the IBF route, which is another route for Hrgovic. I just find it amazing if whoever the winner of Fury Usyk is might have to vacate one of those belts. But yeah, I'm gonna go for a Hrgovic round 2 knockout. 2 more fights to mention: Junior Farr versus Frank Sanchez. Junior Farr, it's a tough fight for Junior Farr, I believe. Very, very tough fight. He's a decent opponent, but he's lost his last few fights. One of those being against Joseph Parker. And Frank Sanchez is an absolute machine of a fighter. So it's interesting. I believe he lost against Lucas Brown and Joseph Parker, Junior Farr. But it's an opportunity to sort of throw his name back into the mix. And Frank Sanchez is a good fighter. Ron, is this potentially one of the fights that we need to be looking out for? Because obviously, it's 2 experienced fighters. But most importantly, it's fighters that are waiting for sort of that next opportunity to get into world title contention.
I think when you mentioned that, I don't see Junior Farr in that conversation about next. I definitely see Frank Sanchez. He's very highly talked of, very good technical Cuban fighters. Cubans have got a history of being very technically sound with their technique. So this could be his opportunity to make a statement, to kind of to announce to the heavyweight division, hey, I'm here too. And some people say, he's quite an avoided fighter as well. But, they don't want to kind of get involved with that.
23-0 with 16 knockouts at 31 years of age, nicknamed the Cuban Flash. We've been blessed to have had some great fighters.
Did he beat F.A. Jagba as well?
Yes, he did. He did.
Yeah, who was also undefeated at the time,
Yeah, so he's kind of already been in that sort of, under the spotlight. And, Junior Farr has as well. As I was about to say, we've been blessed to have had some great Cuban fighters in the past. And it's good to see that we've got one in the heavyweight division because, you look at the top 4, Fury, Usyk, Wilder, Joshua, they're in their 30s now. And you're asking that question, who's the sort of next face of the division? Now, I know this kid's 31, but, he's an interesting fighter. He's currently looked after by Top Rank. As I mentioned, he's got quite a few knockouts on his record. And I would like to see this guy, if he gets to win on Saturday night, I'd love to see him maybe with a Daniel Dubois.
I like the sound of that.
Maybe a Joe Joyce, a Hrgovic. Listen, I'm not going to disrespect Junior Farr by any means necessary, but at some point in your career, you have to sort of start making that sort of step up in class and look at the big names.
Problem with him that he has is high risk, low reward. That's a problem why he's not getting the fights. So he needs to be kind of shouting a lot louder to kind of be in those conversations. You know, if you're a Joy Joyce or a Daniel Dubois, why would you fight him? You know, what do
Yeah,
you
that's true. But again, Ron,
get
you
out?
got
You know what I mean? I'm just kind of being a very pessimist there, but I highly rate him. I've seen a few of his fights. Saw that fight against FA Jagba, and I was really impressed by what he showed them. You know, showed in that fight.
again,
And
Ron,
you
you
know,
got to
he's
look at it.
highly
He's staying active. He's going to keep active. He's going to get a fight under his
yeah.
belt, and hopefully 2024 is the year where he pushes on for bigger and better fights. But Junior Far, soon, you know, the heavyweight division is all about one punch changes the whole game. So, but I go for a Frank Sanchez. I'll go for a round 6 knockout. How about you?
Frank Sanchez, round 4.
Okay. Final fight of the night, of a great night of boxing that we've got to look forward to. Arslenbak Makhmudov versus Agit Kabayel. Now, Agit Kabayel, right, if you look at his record, you know, his biggest win is against Derek Chisora, which is all the way back in 2017, I believe, in Monaco. It was for the European title, and he absolutely bashed Chisora from pillar to post. And at that point, you're thinking, okay, so win against Chisora, 2017, let's move you on to the next phase of your career. But he hasn't really been in any big fights, which is a shame. Is that down to management, promotion, or down to boxing politics? Who knows? Having said that, this is a big fight for him on Saturday night. He's a former European champion. In lockdown, there was a lot of talk of him fighting Tyson Fury behind closed doors, but that fight never happened. So, you know, no disrespect to Makhmudov, big guy, was on the Fury and Ngannou card. Kabayel, right, Ron? Could he be the sort of another fighter that you could add to that list that could potentially maybe be the sort of next chapter in the heavyweight division?
What age? How old is Kabayel? Just out of interest.
Agit Kabayel, I believe, is 28, 29. I'm not too sure. I couldn't give you the age.
Look, I mean, I'm not going to say no. I think, but he's been out of the scene. You know, you kind of forgotten about him. He's like another Manuel Char. You know, that kind of fighter. Like, where have they gone? You know, what have they been fighting? Have they been active? I mean, you said about that fight against Chisora. That's 2017.
Yeah,
that's what. You know, you see where I'm coming from here. He's not stayed relevant in the conversation of heavy, you know, considering for heavyweight contenders. But this is a great opportunity. Makhmudov's kind of well thought of as well. You know, kind of that performance that he put on in that show. I mean, fine, it was a very novice kind of fighter that he was fighting, and he was expected to do that. But he's a bit, he's an up and coming fighter as well. So there's a lot of these kind of Eastern Europeans who mean business. You know, they're very quiet. They go about their business.
Kabayel is 29. Makhmudov's 34. Makhmudov has won 17 of his 18 fights by knockout. So, and the guy's a beast as well.
Look at him. He looks intimidating, doesn't he?
Absolute beast. He looks like a bouncer.
You wouldn't want to meet him in a dark corner, alley or something like that.
Wouldn't want to meet him in light corner, forget alone the dark corner. But yeah, you know, one thing I've mentioned quite a bit throughout this podcast is that fighters, you know, like these two are going to look to sort of the next chapter of their career, and wins on Saturday night elevate that to them. So, you know, Far Sanchez, Makhmudov, Kabayel, great fights, and it can only mean one thing for the winner. You know, and as I mentioned, Makhmudov's got a lot of knockouts in his career. Kabayel didn't really move on to the next phase of his career after that Chisora win. So, you know, put like a stamp on this, Ron. You know, what are we looking for this fight on Saturday? I believe this fight potentially opens the night. Who needs this fight more? Is it Makhmudov being 34 years of age or Kabayel being 29 years of age and sort of trying to move on to that next phase of his career?
Yeah, both do. I think, you know, a defeat could be harmful for both their careers for different reasons. And, you know, he's 34, you know, he doesn't want to get a defeat on this point in his career against this level of opposition. So he wants to, you know, he'll be desperate to kind of make prove a point that he belongs there. And he's, you know, that will open the door for bigger fights in the future.
Yeah.
Kabayel, like you said, you know, he's got a point to prove that he's been out of the scene. You know, I'm going to be genuinely honest with you. I don't know much about him. You know, what has he done since that fight? Do you have a record of his? You know, who has he fought?
He's undefeated.
In the last few years?
He's undefeated. He's a former European champion. And as I said, he was in talks to fight Tyson Fury.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that. Kabayel, that was named, but that was being thrown out a lot at the time. So, but it didn't come out.
It really, really, really is. You know, even these fights that aren't really being talked about much, they're still good fights to watch because, you know, there's no journeyman on this card. You know, it's just strictly fighters that are at that level or trying to get at that level, if you know what I mean. Prediction time. I think Makhmudov's going to beat him. I think Makhmudov stops him in rounds 4 to 8 because Makhmudov's a very active fighter as well. I believe Makhmudov stops him rounds 4 to 8. Ron, Makhmudov versus Kabayel, how does it end?
Yeah, I mean, you said it when you read out his record: 17 knockouts in 18 fights.
Yeah.
I can't look beyond him. I think they were speaking really highly of him on the Ngannou and Fury undercard. So, yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens. You know, that's how the night's going to start off. So, I'm curious to see how he gets on. And Makhmudov hopefully, if he does come through this,
he's from Russia and he's nicknamed the Lion.
Yeah, says enough. So Makhmudov for me, I think it's a knockout. Oh, yeah.
Ron, obviously that's the whole card talked about. What fight are you looking forward to the most and why?
Jarrell Miller and Dubois. I just want to see if Jarrell Miller kind of back up what he's been spewing in the last few weeks in the build up to this event. He kind of took over, he kind of took center stage, but despite we've got bigger fighters, bigger names than him, but he was the loudest person in the room. So
yeah, that's thinking, the fight I'm looking forward
to. This is a real big moment in Dubois' career. If he loses this, what comes of it? Obviously we've got bigger names, but I'm confident that they'll come through this. For me, this is more of a 50-50 fight. This one in particular, so that's one I'm really got my eyes on.
Yeah, it's a fight that the fight that I'm looking forward to the most. But the beauty of it is once that fight finishes, you've got more great fights ahead of you. So it's a great night of boxing. Massive shout out to Turkey Al Sheikh. Massive shout out to Eddie Hearn and Frank Warren, AK best friends. And for the first time, in my lifetime, I can't remember Lewis and Tyson much because social media wasn't around those days. But we're getting a joint broadcasted night of boxing, and it's you're going to have your choice whether to go with the Zone or whether to go with TNT Sports. I'm lucky enough because I've got the IPTV box. Let's not try to say that too loud. Brilliant night of boxing. Really excited to look forward to. Before we end the podcast, Ron, as you mentioned before, reportedly a 2-fight deal has been agreed between Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder, with the first fight taking place in March, in the middle of March, I believe, in Saudi Arabia. Now, listen, they can't look too far ahead. They've both got huge tests on Saturday night. But are you confident, Ron, if Joshua and Wilder do get the job on Saturday night, if they do get the job done on Saturday night, we will finally get to see the fight that we've been wanting to see for a very, very long time with Joshua and Wilder?
They've got no excuses. They work, both their promoters are on the same page. They're on the same kind of stage when they're doing their pre-fight interviews, when they kind of announce the event. So they're in touching distance of each other. So why can't we kind of make that a reality and get them in the ring fighting, facing off with each other? Will we see a face-off after the Joshua fight if he comes through against Wallin?
Well, yeah, but would Wilder, let's say Wilder takes a nasty hit to the face or gets a cut, might you have to go to the hospital or receive medical attention? I don't know.
No,
hopefully we do. I'm hoping we do, because that really would be an early Christmas present. But, me and you, Ron, we say it time and time again, we're a firm believer of the fight will only happen once both fighters are in the ring facing off with each other. Signed contracts, press conferences, they mean absolutely nothing. The fight is happening when both fighters are in the ring and being given instructions by the referee before the first bell. But great way to end 2023. And, Boxing Day, you got a new way defending his world titles as well. So there's still quite a bit to look forward to. Another topic, Ron, I'm going to raise with you. Jake Paul won his fight last Friday night. Fair play to him. Said that he's going to be willing to help out the US Olympic team for Paris 2024. Ron, how did you take to that news?
I think that's a disrespect to them. This is a guy that's doing it for views, and I think they know a lot more than what Jake Paul knows about boxing. I'm sorry, like stay away. You know, like I mean, any of those amateurs will school him. You know, get him in the ring with one of those boys, even though one of those are lighter boys, and they will make him look like really foolish. I'm sorry, no, stay away. If America's got a proud history in the Olympics with boxing and winning lots of gold medals and produced amazing professional athletes, they don't need that. They don't need a Jake Paul helping them.
You know what, Rod? When this whole YouTube / social media boxing started, I wasn't a fan of it. But with what we do our best to deliver as much content as possible. So that means headed down to the Misfits Fight Week. I've kind of become fond of it. So overall, I ain't got a problem with the YouTube / boxing thing.
No, neither have I.
But there is a line, right? There is a limit to things, yeah. As you mentioned, the US Olympic team has a proud history in the Olympics. Floyd Mayweather, Muhammad Ali, Roy Jones Jr., Andre Ward.
Evander Holyfield as well, if you want to add in as well. Yeah.
They were all Olympic champions. Yeah. Now, I mean, Jake Paul started his career, 5-6 years ago? These kids have been boxing from a very, very young age. Now, I don't know about the American scene, but what I do know, and I've spoken to a lot of fighters that were trying to get to the Olympics for Team GB, and they've told me the trials and the tribulations they had to go through just to get to those, to get anywhere close to Team GB. So,
all right, let me ask you a question. Okay, you're talking about GB Olympics.
Hold on. Right. I kind of get that he wants to be involved a bit, yeah. But I personally, if I was part of that US Olympic team next year, I'd want a Holyfield or a Ward or a Mayweather next to me. I wouldn't want.
Like the same way you wouldn't want Tommy Fury in the British Olympics, with that team.
Ronnie's been boxing all of his life. He's got boxing.
No, but not at that level, though. Not at that. I'm sorry, but I think there's. Yeah.
Okay, was that your question?
Just think. No, that's the point I was going to add in, because you were talking about wanting these kind of YouTubers, involved.
No, I don't want to be involved.
A great fight, I mean, if you watched it in terms of just. Yeah, good. I'm glad. Yeah, so like the same way I wouldn't want Tommy Fury to be involved with the British Olympic boxers. Same way, stay away. Jake Paul. This is the first I've heard of it, and it's got me angry now.
Well, that's all we've got time for today on podcast 69 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast. Before we end the podcast, I'd just like to wish all of our followers on social media, all of our subscribers, you, Ron, as well, and to all the members of Team Lights Out, a very Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. It's been a great year for boxing. We've got a great card to look forward to. We've got our end of year review podcast scheduled to come out next week, which hopefully will be in the studio for Ron. Appreciate your time on today's podcast. Look forward to catching up with you on fight night. I know there's going to be a lot of messages going back and forth in the group. And to our viewers out there, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and even share the podcast out. Follow us on all of our social media platforms. Check out our sponsors. The links are below in the description. And again, to listen to this podcast on any of the audio platforms, more links are below in the description. Thank you very much to all of our viewers and listeners for listening to podcast 69 of the Lights Out Boxing podcast.